Hello and welcome. Got another episode of Mark. That's me talking about Magic. Uh, Today we're going to be talking about uh, a commander deck by the name of Kodama Counters by R. Freebird. This is another player at our LGS, and they submitted their deck for to go through this process of me talking about it and having hopefully a great time doing it. So let's dig right into this thing. This is a mono green deck, and it is led by Kodama of the West Tree. It's a 3/3 spirit for 2 and a green. Has reach, easy thing to forget. It says modified creatures you control have trample. So what's a modified creature? That is a creature that has a counter on it, has an aura on it, or has an equipment attached to it. Whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So the presumption here is that we're going to be trying to uh, uh, modify all of our creatures. Some of them might be modified on their own. Some of them we might have to do the modifying. But the title of the deck, Kodama Counters, suggests very strongly that we're going to be putting +1/+1 counters on our creatures. And I should add that the architect, the builder, the owner of this deck, uh, they gave me a little bit of background about how they felt about this deck. This was a personal favorite commander for the card, the art, the story of the character, um, the idea of the modified creatures, and I enjoy it. The creatures becoming a better version of themselves, I suppose we could say. Uh, and you know, of all the things that I am hoping to do by making these videos, uh, talking about decks that people have built and they really care about and they really like, uh, man, that is humbling and it is awesome to be able to do. So I'm excited for this one. So let's get into it a little bit. Uh, Again, this is a creature who wants our creatures to have +1/+1 counters, and then the benefit that we get is when they deal combat damage to a player, which we're giving them trample to make that easier. When they deal combat damage to a player, we're going to go find some lands. So we're going to talk about each piece of this. So the +1/+1 counterpart, let's just talk a little bit about that. We've got card like Stonecoil Serpent that just enters with counters on it. Same thing with Mistcutter Hydra, same thing with Voracious Hydra. These are creatures that are kind of doing it themselves. Then we got cards like Forgotten Ancient that are piling up +1/+1 counters when people play spells, and then you can redistribute those counters later on. We've got Defiler of Vigor. Every time we cast a green permanent spell, we get a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control. That's pretty crazy. We've got Rishkar. Says creatures that we control with a counter on it can tap for green mana. I mean, this is a green deck, right? So we're obviously going to be trying to ramp. We want to be doing big things. That's what mono green does. It casts big things. And even if all we do is look at our stuff here, we can see we hardly have anything in this inexpensive range. Everything is 3, 4, 5, a billion mana, right? Even that way with the spells, like there are some big time, big mana haymaker type things. That's what green does, baby. You love to see it. Uh, then we've got a thing here, Colonial Hydra, great card. Says when it attacks, well, first of all, it puts counters on itself. When it attacks, you double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. That is bonkers. Like, wow. Okay, that's a big one. Here we have Kodama of the East Tree. Talk about some flavor with your character right here. We got him. We got Kodama all over the place. I think we're doing this for flavor reasons, honestly. Vigor. Our creatures don't take damage. They get +1/+1 counters. I mean, come on. That's, yeah. Vorinclex. If we put counters on our stuff, we get double. If our opponents put counters on their things, they get half. I mean, why not? Why not do it? Why not do it? Got some other big, beefy boys here. We don't need to go into great detail on these. This is just what you do. You cast stuff that's got a ton of mana, that you need a ton of mana to cast, because, look, we're going and finding lands. Got another X spell here. Green Sun Zenith lets us go and find things out of our library. Thrive lets us put counters on all of our creatures. You love to see that. Finale of Devastation is another way to use a ton of mana. It's a way to end the game. We've got a couple other ones there. Craterhoof Behemoth, a popular one. Zopandrel, a popular one. Primeval Protector is pretty cool. When it comes in, it's going to put a +1/+1 counter on all of our creatures. You love to see that. We have lots more things that put counters on our creatures. Doubling Season to double them up, kind of like Vorinclex already is doing. So we got a couple different ways to do that. So a card like this is where I'm gonna use this card as my segue between two different pieces of this deck. So the commander cares about our creatures being modified, and +1/+1 counters being the core of what this deck is. It also says when we hit, we get to we go find another basic land and put it on the battlefield. So secondarily, in a deck like this, it would be awesome if we could be getting a value off of the other piece of this card, right? Like we get to add things, whatever they are, based on our lands coming in. And that's what this is doing. Absolutely phenomenal. You put a land in, you get a +1/+1 counter. Absolutely nails the whole bit with this deck right here. Fantastic card. Absolutely love to see it. Branching Evolution, doubling the counters. Court of Garenbrig. Again, another card that's adding some counters, and this is just, the Monarch is such a fun thing in Commander. That's a personal opinion, I understand, but it's such a fun thing to be doing in Commander. The land base, of course, we want a whole. Oh, look, it picked the broccoli forest for our our art here, but we want a lot of basics. I mean, we got a huge number of them. We want a lot of them because that is what our deck is going to find. Oran Reef puts counters on our things. Karn's Bastion proliferates the counters on our things. Drannith Ruins puts counters on our things. All part of the deal. So, we got the Ozolith here. In case something leaves the battlefield, dies, whatever. The counters don't just go away, they go on the Ozolith, and the Ozolith puts them somewhere else. So we're doing a great job with all that stuff. So now we talk about how do we win the game with a deck like this? Well, I mean, the obvious answer is make our creatures big and attack with them and finish the opponent off, right? And we've got some really sweet haymakers, like we talked about Craterhoof Behemoth, but we've got some other big ones too. Apex Devastator we got these big spells, and Finale of Devastation is arguably the most effectively dominant way to do that. But those are some examples of how we win the game. But now, the architect, the builder of this deck, talked about this being the Last March of the Ents, potentially being their favorite card in the deck. The spell can't be countered. Love it. You love to see that, the text on a card right there. It says, draw cards equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control, then put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. I mean, wow, right? I mean, even if we were only doing this for like 6 or 7, that's pretty awesome, right? I mean, that's pretty phenomenal. And we've got 30 creatures plus the commander, but we've got 30 creatures in this deck that we're going to find, that we could find. So we have a good chance of hitting multiple. But if we get a creature that's real big and we do this, we might put 10, 12 creatures onto the battlefield pretty easily. I mean, that's probably going to win the game right there. And, you know, this card is a Lord of the Rings card, but it does bear a kind of a cool similarity with the, you know, oh, here we are out in our forest and we're trying to battle for our forest. And then this last March of the Ents card's like, yeah, bruh, for show. That's what we're trying to do. I don't think Treebeard ever said for show, but you know what I mean. Just talking about a couple of the support cards. I love Toski. I just love Toski. This is fantastic. Has to attack all the time, but Toski don't care. Toski indestructible and can't be countered. Get off my lawn. Let me draw some cards on your lawn. That's what we're going to do. Orin Frostfang, another way to draw some cards. Roaming Throne turns Kodama and the triggers into bonkers nonsense. I want to go back to this idea of getting benefit from our lands coming onto the battlefield. Rampaging Baloths. Fantastic landfall card. Scoot Swarm. Scoot Swarm. You know, this card could just have a picture of a Scoot wearing a shirt that says, I love math. Because that's really what you have to be for the card like this. You got to love your math. So once you have at least the 6 lands that this thing cares about, to not be making insect tokens, but to be making copies of Scoot Swarm, like, that's what we're doing. We're doing some nonsensical, crazy math. And you might be saying, well, however many Scoot Swarms you have, if you play a land, you just get double the amount. I'm like, yeah, that's cool for you math brain geniuses. 100%. But but if you have 173 Scoot Swarms, how many is 173 times 2? Like, sure, some of us are just going to get that right away, and then others of us are going to be like, why don't you shut up? I don't want to have to do that. I'm an adult now. But if you love math, like Scoot Swarm, I think probably loves math. This is a great card for this deck. You're going to put lands into play. You're going to get extra Scoots. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be great. We got some ways to pump up our guys. Beastmaster Ascension, good way to do that. But here's another thing that I really like about this deck. This is one of my favorite things about anybody building commander decks is they put their own touch, or they put their own twist, or they pick their own cards. They pick things that they just want or like or are interested in. And so there are some equipments, like we have Basilisk Collar, we have Lightning Greaves, we have Swiftfoot Boots. These are ways to modify our creatures. But we see these kinds of things pretty regularly. Here's a card we don't see regularly. One with Nature. Whenever an enchanted creature deals combat damage to a player, you may search your library for a basic land card and put it into play tapped. Where have we seen that text before? Oh, look, right here. This is another you love to see it kind of a thing in a deck like this. Kind of a fun way to deal with a problem creature. You just turn it into an elk. Oko would be proud. Let's put it that way. So you love to see stuff like this. Master Chef. I don't even know if we care what it says. We love that we're cooking with this deck. We love it. But it does help us with our plus encounters. One thing that I would talk about with this deck that's really interesting. So, Tribute to the World Tree. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater. Otherwise, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So, in context, this is a fantastic card because of its flexibility. It's doing a good thing no matter what. But in this deck, the weaker of those two abilities, which is putting the counters on the creature, is so much stronger in a deck like this. Because it synergizes with exactly what our commander wants to do. So this is a good card by itself, but it's probably a great card in this deck. Absolutely love it. Okay, we've talked a lot about a lot of this stuff. Oh, I want to talk about Return to Nature. So, modal cards like this, where we get to pick the thing that we're going to do out of a group of things, always better than it seems on a card. Okay. So let's try to tie this all together. Let's try to tie together our Kodama counters and just and get to the meat of the conversation here. This to me, this for me is very, very, very much a deck after my own heart. This is exactly the kind of game that I like to play. I like to play games where we don't come flying out of the gate usually. We do our build up, we get a thing or another thing or another thing, and then once we've gotten a couple turns with our things going, we snowball and we get some huge things going. And I really like that. I really enjoy that kind of game. And that is exactly what this deck is doing. This deck is kind of, building and building and building, and then you get rewarded for the building that you've done with a card like this. Or you get rewarded for the building that you've done with Craterhoof. Or with Primeval Protector, you get a nice payoff. Or you swing with a Colonian Hydra and everything goes crazy. This is exactly what this deck is. So, is it reliant on its commander? For sure. But it kind of stops really relying on the commander in the later part of the game. And that's kind of an interesting thing. Some of these decks are kind of reliant on the commander the whole time. And this is one of those decks where the commander is really, really helpful in the early part of the game, and then in the later part of the game, it doesn't matter anymore because you got everything that you need. Personally, I think this is the type of deck that would be enjoyable at pretty much any table. I think people would have a great time playing with it or against it. It's not countering your spells. It's just saying I'm gonna build up and I'm gonna get bigger than you, and you're gonna get the heck off my land. And what could be better than that? And we got Math Bug right here. That's what we got, along with all these other cool cards. So that's my summary. I could talk more about a lot of these cards and how interesting they are to me, but check it out for yourself. Look at some of these cards for yourself and see what you think. I'd love to hear some feedback in the comments. I'm sure the pilot would as well. Love to hear some feedback in the comments. I think that this is the sort of deck that could sit at just about any table and not feel over or underwhelming. And I gotta say, that is a chef's kiss, brilliant type of a deck. Love to see it. thank you all for watching and checking this out. I really appreciate people chiming in and being willing to offer ideas and deck lists that we can talk about. And if you're watching this, feel free to do the same. Put it in the comments, or if you are part of our LGS and you want to talk in our Discord, do that. If you want to hit me up any other way and you know how to do that, go ahead and do it. But I'm looking forward to doing more of these and having a great time with it. So thank you. I love you all and hope you have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your day. Peace.